The diplomatic trap, the message arrived on a frequency humanity had never used before. It bypassed every security protocol, appearing simultaneously on every major communication hub across human-controlled space. The Galactic Council, an alliance of 47 alien species, was extending an invitation. They called it the Great Peace Accord, a treaty that would welcome humanity into the greater galactic community as equals. Commander Sarah Chen stood in the war room of Earth's primary defense station, reading the translated message for the 5th time. Something about it felt wrong. The words were beautiful, promising trade partnerships, technology exchanges, and mutual protection agreements. But Sarah had spent 20 years in military intelligence before taking command of humanity's diplomatic security division. She had learned to read between lines that others missed. Around the conference table sat the other members of the response team. Admiral Marcus Rivera, commander of the 3rd Fleet, drummed his fingers against the polished surface. Dr. Kenji Tanaka, head of the Xenological Intelligence Network, studied data streams on his tablet with narrowed eyes. Ambassador Elena Volkov, Earth's chief diplomat, looked eager but cautious. Sarah noticed the tension in the room matched her own unease. Admiral Rivera broke the silence first. The timing troubles me. 3 months ago, we detected unusual energy signatures near the Proxima colonies. 2 months ago, several of our deep space probes went silent. Last month, merchant vessels reported being scanned by unknown ships. Now suddenly they want peace. Dr. Tanaka looked up from his tablet, his expression grim. I have been analyzing communication patterns across the known alien networks. There has been increased chatter in the past 6 months. Encrypted messages, coded transmissions, all pointing toward something they call Project Unity. The translations are unclear, but the sentiment is not peaceful. Ambassador Volkov leaned forward, her diplomatic training evident in her measured tone. Perhaps we are being paranoid. Not every extended hand hides a weapon. The Council has never directly threatened us. Sarah met her eyes steadily. They have never acknowledged us either. For 50 years, humanity has been expanding into space. We have colonies on 12 worlds, mining operations on 30 asteroids, and trade routes spanning 4 systems. In all that time, the Council pretended we did not exist. Now they suddenly want us to join them? Something changed, and I want to know what. The debate continued for hours. Some argued for accepting the invitation at face value, seeing it as humanity's chance to step onto the galactic stage. Others shared Sarah's suspicions but could not provide definitive proof of hostile intent. Finally, the decision came from the highest levels of human government. They would attend the peace talks but would go prepared for anything. Sarah was given command of the diplomatic mission with full authority to protect human interest by any means necessary. Preparation began immediately. The diplomatic vessel, christened the Unity's Hope, was outfitted with state-of-the-art defensive systems disguised as standard navigation equipment. Hidden weapon bays were installed behind hull plating that could be jettisoned in seconds. The ship's reactor was upgraded to military specifications, giving it power output far beyond what a diplomatic vessel should possess. Every member of the delegation received combat training, though they would present themselves as peaceful academics and diplomats. Dr. Tanaka's intelligence network worked around the clock. They infiltrated alien communication networks, planted surveillance devices on trade stations, and recruited sources among the less hostile species. Slowly, a picture emerged. The Galactic Council had not invited humanity out of goodwill. They saw humanity's rapid expansion as a threat. The treaty was designed to limit human growth, placing colonies under Council oversight and restricting military development. Clauses buried in legal terminology would essentially make humanity a vassal state rather than an equal partner. But there was more. Deep in the encrypted files, Dr. Tanaka found references to contingency protocols. If humanity refused the treaty terms, the Council had positioned military assets to strike. Fleets were hidden in nearby systems. Weapons platforms orbited beyond sensor range of human colonies, and strike teams were prepared to capture key installations. The peace talks were not an invitation. They were a trap. Refuse and face overwhelming force. Accept and surrender freedom. The Council believed they had cornered humanity perfectly. Sarah called an emergency meeting. When she presented the intelligence findings, the room fell silent. Admiral Rivera was the first to speak, his voice cold with controlled anger. They expect us to walk into their station unarmed and accept subjugation. And if we refuse, they will attack our colonies while our leadership is trapped on their territory. Ambassador Volkov looked shaken but determined. We cannot simply refuse the invitation. That would trigger their military response immediately. We need time to evacuate colonies and position our fleets. Sarah stood, her decision made. We attend the peace talks as planned. But we will not go as lambs to slaughter. We will bring weapons, hidden fleets, and contingency plans of our own. If they want to play games with humanity's future, they will learn that we are very good players. The room erupted in discussion, but Sarah raised her hand for silence. We have 6 weeks before the scheduled talks. That gives us time to position assets, gather more intelligence, and prepare for every possible scenario. They think they are 3 steps ahead. We will be 6 steps ahead. The next 6 weeks were a whirlwind of covert activity. Admiral Rivera quietly repositioned the 2nd and 4th fleets, moving them into nearby systems under the pretense of training exercises. The ships maintained communication silence and activated advanced stealth systems developed in secret human laboratories. Dr. Tanaka's agents worked to identify sympathetic alien species, those who resented the Council's dominance. They found allies in unexpected places, aliens who provided intelligence and promised to remain neutral if conflict erupted. Human engineers developed new technologies at an unprecedented pace. Quantum communication devices that could not be jammed or intercepted. Energy shields based on principles the Council had never encountered. Weapons that could punch through standard alien defensive systems. Humanity's advantage had always been adaptability and innovation. Now those traits would be tested against species with thousands of years of galactic experience. Sarah personally selected each member of the diplomatic delegation. Ambassador Volkov would handle the actual negotiations, presenting humanity's public face. Dr. Tanaka would analyze everything, watching for threats and opportunities. Admiral Rivera would command the hidden military assets ready to strike if needed. Dozens of others filled specialized roles, each chosen for competence and trustworthiness. They all understood the stakes. Failure meant the end of human independence. The Unity's hope departed Earth on schedule, following the navigation coordinates provided by the Council. The journey took 2 weeks, traveling through hyperspace lanes that were new to humanity. Sarah used the time to drill the crew on response protocols. Every possible scenario was rehearsed until reactions became instinctive. The ship's hidden weapons were tested and retested. Communication protocols with the hidden fleets were verified. Nothing was left to chance. They emerged from hyperspace near the Council station, and Sarah felt her breath catch. The structure was massive beyond imagination, a construct of metal and energy that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. Thousands of ships orbited it, representing dozens of alien species. The station itself glowed with power, its surface bristling with technology both beautiful and intimidating. This was the heart of galactic civilization, and humanity had just arrived at its doorstep. The greeting was formal and elaborate. Council representatives welcomed them with ceremony and speeches about unity and cooperation. Sarah smiled and played her role, the grateful newcomer honored by the invitation, but her eyes cataloged every detail. The placement of weapons emplacements, the patrol patterns of security ships, the energy signatures that suggested hidden systems. She noticed Admiral Rivera doing the same, his military training identifying tactical elements automatically. They were escorted to luxurious quarters and given time to rest before the official talks began. Sarah used the opportunity to deploy surveillance devices, microscopic sensors that would monitor everything. Dr. Tanaka established secure communication links with their hidden fleets and intelligence networks. The delegation prepared for what was coming, knowing that pleasant hospitality could turn to violence in moments. The first day of talks was cordial. The Council presented their vision of galactic cooperation. Speaking of trade and mutual defense, Ambassador Volkov responded with appropriate enthusiasm, asking thoughtful questions and expressing gratitude. But as the hours passed, the true nature of the treaty began to emerge. Clauses about technology sharing that would give the Council access to all human innovations, restrictions on colony expansion that would prevent humanity from growing, military limitations that would leave human space defenseless, and woven throughout, language that made clear these were not negotiations, they were demands. Sarah watched Council Chancellor Vexthor, the primary architect of this trap. He was a tall being from a species that valued cunning over strength, his three eyes constantly moving to assess reactions. When he spoke of the treaty terms, there was satisfaction in his voice. He believed humanity had no choice but to accept. The alternative, he suggested with casual menace, would be unfortunate for such a young species. Sarah said nothing, but she marked him as the primary threat. That evening, Dr. Tanaka received confirmation from his sources. The Council's military assets were moving into final positions. Within 72 hours, every major human colony would be within striking range. The timetable was clear now. The Council would present their final treaty terms tomorrow. Humanity would be given 12 hours to accept. If they refused, the attacks would begin while their leadership was trapped on the station, unable to coordinate a defense. It was, Sarah had to admit, a well-designed trap. She called an emergency meeting in their secured quarters. The delegation gathered, faces serious, as she shared the intelligence. "We are out of time. Tomorrow they will demand our answer." Admiral Rivera nodded grimly. "Our fleets are in position. On your order, we can strike at their military assets." Dr. Tanaka added his own findings. "I have identified which council members support this aggression and which are uncomfortable with it. There are fractures we can exploit." Ambassador Volkov spoke carefully. "If we fight, even if we win, we may make enemies of the entire galaxy." Sarah met her eyes. "If we surrender, we lose everything that makes us human. Our freedom to choose our own path, our ability to protect ourselves, our future. Better to fight as free people than to survive as slaves." The room fell silent as everyone considered the weight of that decision. Finally, Volkov nodded. "Then we show them what humanity truly is." The next morning, the delegation entered the Great Council chamber. Thousands of aliens watched from tiered seating that rose toward a domed ceiling, painted with stellar maps. At the center sat the council leadership, with Chancellor Vexthor presiding. The atmosphere was ceremonial, but underneath, Sarah felt the tension. This was the moment of truth. Vexthor stood, his voice amplified throughout the vast space. "Humanity, you have heard our generous offer. The Great Peace Accord will welcome you into civilized galactic society. All we ask is your cooperation and trust. Sign the treaty, accept our guidance, and prosper under council protection." His three eyes fixed on Sarah. "The alternative would be regrettable. We would hate to see a young species make enemies so early in their development." The threat was clear now, spoken aloud for all to hear. Sign or face destruction. Around the chamber, alien representatives watched with various expressions. Some looked satisfied, others uncomfortable. A few appeared genuinely curious about humanity's response. Sarah stood, feeling the weight of billions of humans depending on this moment. She had spent weeks preparing for this, but now that it arrived, she felt the full gravity of what came next. Ambassador Volkov stepped forward, her voice calm and clear. "We appreciate the Council's invitation and have given your treaty careful consideration." Sarah watched Vexthor lean forward slightly. Anticipation in his posture. He expected surrender, the inevitable capitulation of a trapped species. Volkov continued, her tone never changing. "However, we must decline your terms." The chamber erupted in noise, aliens reacting with shock and anger. Vexthor's expression shifted to something ugly. Before he could speak, Sarah raised her hand. At that signal, everything changed. Throughout the station, human surveillance devices activated, broadcasting on every frequency. Images appeared on displays across the chamber, showing the Council's hidden fleets, their weapons platforms, their strike teams positioned near human colonies. Dr. Tanaka's voice, transmitted from their quarters, provided calm narration. "These are the peaceful intentions of the Galactic Council. Military assets positioned for invasion while they spoke of cooperation." Vexthor stood, his voice rising. "This is an outrage. How dare you spy on Council operations?" Sarah smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "We dare because we suspected the truth. You never wanted peace. You wanted submission." Her hand moved to her communicator. At her signal, the hidden human fleets decloaked in systems surrounding the station. Suddenly, the tactical displays showed dozens of human warships appearing from nowhere, their weapons powered and targeting the Council's military assets. Admiral Rivera's voice came through on the general channel, calm and professional. "Council fleet commanders, you are now in our targeting solutions. Stand down or be destroyed." The chamber fell silent as the reality of the situation became clear. Humanity had not walked into the trap unprepared. They had anticipated everything, planned for every contingency, and turned the ambush back on the council. Chancellor Vexthor stared at Sarah, his 3 eyes wide with disbelief. "This is impossible. You are a primitive species. How could you have known?" Sarah's expression hardened. "We may be young, but we are not stupid. We have fought wars among ourselves for thousands of years. We understand deception, strategy, and survival. You made one critical mistake. You underestimated us." Around the chamber, alien representatives were reacting with shock and confusion. Some species that had been uncomfortable with the council's plan now looked relieved. Others appeared angry or frightened. The balance of power had shifted in moments, and no one was certain what would happen next. Sarah knew this was the most dangerous moment. They had exposed the trap, but now they stood at the precipice. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and the situation could explode into galaxy-wide war. Dr. Tanaka's intelligence network activated the final phase. Messages went out to every species in the council, revealing not just this trap but years of council manipulation and coercion. Species that had been forced into compliance, resources taken under false pretenses, freedoms restricted in the name of unity. The revelations spread like wildfire, and suddenly the council's authority began to crack. Sarah had not just prepared to counter the military threat. She had prepared to shatter the political foundation that made the threat possible. Vexthor looked around the chamber, seeing his carefully constructed plan collapsing. His authority crumbling as species began demanding answers. Human weapons pointed at his fleets, his deception exposed for all to see. For the first time, uncertainty crossed his features. He had believed himself in control, the puppet master pulling strings. Now he realized he had been outmaneuvered completely. Sarah spoke into the silence, her voice carrying throughout the vast chamber. "The Galactic Council invited humanity to peace talks with the intent to trap us. They positioned fleets to attack our homes while we were here. Unable to defend our people, they prepared to murder billions or enslave them under a false treaty." She paused, letting that sink in. "But humanity came prepared. We saw through the deception, and now we stand here not as victims, but as a species that will not be intimidated or controlled." The chamber erupted in discussion, but Sarah was not finished. She had one more card to play, one more revelation that would complete humanity's victory. Ambassador Volkov stepped forward again, this time holding a different document. "We decline your false peace treaty. Instead, we present our own terms. This time, these will be real negotiations between equals." Or, she glanced at the tactical displays showing human ships surrounding the Council's fleets. "You can choose war and see how well that works out." Chancellor Vexthor looked at the document, then at Sarah, then at the displays showing his military advantage transformed into a tactical nightmare. For a long moment he said nothing. Then slowly something like respect entered his expression. He had underestimated humanity catastrophically, but he was intelligent enough to recognize when he had been beaten. He sat back down, his posture defeated. "Very well. Let us discuss your terms." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Around the chamber, she saw various reactions. Fear from some species, anger from others, but also something else. Respect. Humanity had walked into the lion's den, turned the trap back on the trappers, and emerged victorious through preparation and intelligence. They had proven themselves not as primitives to be controlled, but as a species that belonged on the galactic stage. But this was only the beginning. The immediate crisis was contained, but the real work lay ahead. New treaties to negotiate, relationships to build, a place in galactic civilization to secure, and always the need for vigilance. Because humanity had learned the most important lesson. In a galaxy full of species with thousands of years of experience, survival meant never being the easiest target. It meant being smart, prepared, and always 3 steps ahead. As the council leaders reluctantly moved toward actual negotiations, Sarah caught Admiral Rivera's eye. He nodded slightly, a gesture of approval and relief. They had gambled everything on their preparation and intelligence, and it had worked. Humanity would not kneel. They would stand as equals, respected and perhaps feared, but never again dismissed as primitives. The galaxy had tried to deceive them with false peace, but humanity had brought weapons nevertheless, and that made all the difference. The price of underestimating humanity. The council chamber remained tense as Chancellor Vexthor reluctantly gestured for the human delegation to present their terms. Around the vast circular room, Representatives from 47 alien species watched with expressions ranging from shock to curiosity. Sarah Chen stepped forward, her boots echoing on the polished floor. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, but now that it arrived, she felt the weight of history pressing down. What happened in the next hours would determine humanity's place in the galaxy for generations to come. Ambassador Volkov activated a holographic display that materialized above the council floor. The image showed not a treaty document, but a timeline. Dr. Tanaka's voice, transmitted from their secure quarters, began narrating with clinical precision. 6 months ago, the Council initiated Project Unity. The stated goal was bringing humanity into galactic civilization. The actual goal was preventing human expansion through military force or political subjugation. Sarah watched Vexthor's face as the evidence mounted. Purchase orders for weapons specifically designed to counter human technology. Communications discussing optimal strike points on human colonies. Strategic assessments concluding that humanity posed a long-term threat that needed to be controlled now. Admiral Marcus Rivera's image appeared on another display, broadcasting from the bridge of his flagship hidden in a nearby system. Our intelligence network has been operational for 2 years. We suspected Council interest in humanity was not benign when your survey ships began mapping our colony defenses while claiming to be conducting scientific research. His tone was matter-of-fact, almost conversational. We responded by accelerating our own military development and establishing covert observation posts throughout Council space. The revelation caused another wave of shock through the chamber. A species called the Thalarians, known for their advanced sensor technology, stood abruptly. Impossible. Our detection systems would have identified any human presence. Dr. Tanaka's response came with a hint of pride. Your detection systems are designed to find ships using standard drive signatures and communication protocols. We developed entirely new technologies specifically to avoid detection. Quantum displacement drives that leave no energy trace. Communication systems operating on dimensional frequencies you have never explored. You were looking for us using methods we had already made obsolete. Sarah observed the reactions carefully. Some species looked impressed. Others appeared frightened at the implications. If humanity could hide entire fleets in surveillance networks from the Council's best technology, what else were they capable of? That fear was useful, Sarah knew. Respect often grew from a healthy understanding of consequences. Chancellor Vexthor had recovered some of his composure, though his 3 eyes still showed uncertainty. You claim we planned to attack, yet you brought weapons to peace talks and positioned fleets in our territory. How is that different? Ambassador Volkov responded smoothly, her diplomatic training evident. The difference is intent and honesty. We came prepared to defend ourselves if necessary, but we came seeking genuine understanding. You invited us under false pretenses with the goal of forcing submission or launching attacks. We suspected deception and prepared accordingly. That is not aggression, that is prudence. She paused, then added with steel in her voice, and it saved billions of lives on both sides. If we had walked into your trap unprepared, the resulting war would have cost countless casualties before we could mount an effective defense. Admiral Rivera expanded the tactical display, showing the current positions of both human and Council forces. Your fleets outnumber ours 3-1. Your technology has been refined over thousands of years. By every conventional measure, you should have overwhelming advantage. Sarah saw where he was going with this and suppressed a smile. But warfare is not just about numbers. It is about strategy, adaptation, and will. Humans have been fighting war since before we left our home planet. We understand conflict at a fundamental level. Every human child learns history filled with battles, strategies, and the consequences of underestimating opponents. Dr. Tanaka took over the presentation, displaying comparative technology assessments. You assumed we were primitive because we only recently achieved interstellar travel. That assumption was your first mistake. Humanity developed advanced technology rapidly because we had to. Our homeworld has limited resources and a hostile environment in many regions. We learned to innovate or die. His data showed human advances in several fields that exceeded Council capabilities. Material science, computer systems, energy efficiency, all areas where necessity had driven rapid development. The presentation shifted to show the hidden human fleets in detail. Ships with hull designs that scattered sensor sweeps, weapon systems using principles the Council had never weaponized, defensive shields based on technologies humanity had developed in isolation. Each innovation represented humanity's different perspective, unconstrained by the Council's established scientific paradigms. We did not copy your technology. We developed our own paths. That gave us capabilities you never anticipated because you assumed everyone progressed the same way you did. A council member from a species called the Corinthians, renowned for their military prowess, stood with what Sarah interpreted as respect. Your preparation is admirable, but you cannot maintain this advantage forever. Eventually, we will adapt to your technologies. You will lose the element of surprise. Admiral Rivera nodded agreement. Absolutely correct, which is why we do not seek victory through technological advantage alone. We seek something more permanent. He gestured, and the display changed again. This time, the hologram showed communication logs, diplomatic exchanges, and intelligence reports spanning months. Dr. Tanaka explained each element methodically. While you prepared your trap, we were building relationships, quietly reaching out to species who felt oppressed by Council dominance, sharing technology with groups who had been denied advancement, offering trade agreements that benefited both parties equally. His data showed an intricate web of connections humanity had established across dozens of worlds. Sarah watched Chancellor Vexthor's expression darken as he understood the full scope of what humanity had accomplished. They had not just prepared militarily. They had undermined the Council's political foundation, creating alternatives and alliances that bypassed traditional power structures. Ambassador Volkov drove the point home. You believed you controlled the galaxy through military might and political unity, but unity built on coercion is fragile. We showed species there were alternatives. Now, even if you wanted to attack us, how many of your member species would actually support that war? The question hung in the air. Around the chamber, representatives exchanged glances. Some species had already been contacted by human diplomats, offered better deals than the Council provided. Others had received intelligence about Council manipulations they had long suspected, but could never prove. The revelation of the trap against humanity made many question what else the Council leadership had done without their knowledge or consent. The carefully maintained facade of unified galactic government was cracking. A voice spoke from one of the upper tiers. Ambassador Zarakin of the Valurians, a species known for their philosophical approach to governance, stood with deliberate dignity. I was among those who questioned Project Unity from its inception. The Chancellor assured us it was necessary for galactic stability. She looked directly at Vexthor, her expression disappointed. Now I see it was about maintaining control through fear. Humanity's arrival threatened that control because they developed independently, without Council oversight. Several other representatives nodded agreement, their support for the Chancellor visibly weakening. Sarah recognized this as the critical moment. The military standoff was contained. The political situation was shifting in humanity's favor. Now came the delicate task of converting victory into lasting peace without humiliating the Council so thoroughly that they became permanent enemies. She stepped forward, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. We did not come here seeking to destroy the Galactic Council. Despite your deception, we recognize that this organization has maintained relative peace for centuries. That has value. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. But peace built on the domination of some species by others is not true peace. It is merely the absence of open warfare. Humanity proposes something different. A council where all species participate as genuine equals, where decisions require consensus, not just the approval of the strongest members, where young species are welcomed and mentored, not controlled and exploited. The chamber was silent now, every being focused on her words. We have proven we cannot be intimidated or controlled. Now we offer partnership instead. Ambassador Volkov activated another display, this one showing a proposed restructured treaty. The terms were fair but firm. Humanity would join the Galactic Council as full members with equal voting rights. All species would have access to combined technology databases, with contribution and access based on merit rather than political favor. Military forces would be reduced across the board, with independent verification to ensure compliance. And critically, the Council's charter would be amended to include protections against the kind of coercive tactics that had been attempted against humanity. Admiral Rivera added the military component. Human fleets will withdraw from Council space once this treaty is ratified and verified. Our surveillance networks will be removed. Our hidden assets will be disclosed. But understand this clearly. We will maintain the capability to defend ourselves. If any species or coalition attempts what the Council tried today, they will face the full response of a united humanity. We seek peace, but we are prepared for war. That is not a threat. It is a promise. Dr. Tanaka provided the intelligence perspective. We have shared evidence of Council manipulations with many species. Some of you have been denied technology you developed yourselves. Others have paid unfair prices for resources abundant elsewhere. Several species have been prevented from expanding because it would compete with Council interests. His presentation showed case after case of exploitation hidden behind bureaucratic language. This information is now public. The old system cannot continue unchanged. Either we build something better together, or the Council fragments as species, seek better arrangements elsewhere. Chancellor Vexthor sat in silence, his three eyes moving. Between the displays, the gathered representatives and the human delegation, Sarah could see him calculating, understanding that he had lost not just this immediate confrontation, but the larger, political battle. Species that had followed Council leadership out of necessity or fear now saw alternatives. The military advantage he had counted on was negated by human preparation. The trap that should have secured Council dominance had instead exposed its weaknesses. Finally he spoke, his voice lacking its earlier confidence. You have made your point effectively. Humanity is not to be trifled with. You have preparation, intelligence, and capabilities we did not anticipate. But surely you understand that accepting these terms represents a fundamental restructuring of galactic governance. Such changes take time. Sarah shook her head firmly. Time is something we will not give you to regroup and plan new approaches. The treaty will be ratified today, or we withdraw completely and pursue bilateral relationships with individual species. Your choice. The ultimatum was stark. Either the Council accepted fundamental change immediately, or humanity would bypass it entirely and create an alternative power structure. Given the relationships humanity had already established and the evidence of Council manipulation now public, many species would likely follow the human lead. The Council could maintain its authority by adapting, or lose it entirely by refusing. Ambassador Zarakin stood again, her voice resonant with authority. I move that we vote on the human proposal immediately. This crisis was created by leadership decisions made without full Council consultation. We should not compound that error by delaying necessary reforms. The vote was called. One by one, species cast their decisions. Some supported the changes eagerly, seeing opportunity for greater autonomy. Others voted reluctantly, recognizing that the old system had failed but uncertain about the new. A few refused, loyal to the Chancellor or resistant to change on principle. But when the count finished, the result was clear. The proposal passed with 73% support, far more than the simple majority required. Chancellor Vexthor stood slowly, his posture conveying defeat. He looked at Sarah with an expression mixing resentment and grudging respect. You won, Commander Chen. Humanity has secured its independence and reshaped galactic governance in the process. I underestimated your species catastrophically. Sarah met his gaze steadily. You underestimated us because you judged us by our age rather than our capabilities. That is a mistake humans learned to avoid millennia ago. Judge individuals and species by their actions and potential, not by arbitrary measures like how long they have existed. The formal treaty signing took hours, with each species adding their agreement to the document that would reshape galactic civilization. Ambassador Volkov handled the diplomatic details with skill, ensuring every clause was clear and enforceable. Admiral Rivera coordinated with Council military commanders, establishing verification protocols for the mutual drawdown of forces. Dr. Tanaka shared intelligence methodology with species who would form the new oversight committees, ensuring the reforms had teeth. Throughout the process, Sarah observed the changing dynamics. Species that had never spoken to each other were forming connections. Groups that had been rivals under council manipulation discovered common interests. The rigid hierarchy that had characterized galactic governance was already softening into something more fluid and democratic. It would not be perfect, she knew. Politics never was, but it would be better, fairer, more responsive to the needs of all species rather than just the powerful few. As the signing concluded, Ambassador Zarakin approached the human delegation privately. "On behalf of those who opposed this conspiracy from the start, I apologize." The council failed in its duty to welcome new species properly. Sarah accepted the apology with a slight bow, recognizing the genuine regret in the alien's manner. "Your opposition and your vote today show that the council has members who value justice over expedience. That gives me hope for the future." The delegation returned to the Unity's Hope as the station's artificial day cycle dimmed into evening. In their quarters, away from alien observation, Sarah finally allowed herself to relax. Admiral Rivera poured drinks, a human tradition for celebrating survival and success. Dr. Tanaka collapsed into a chair, exhaustion evident after days of intense intelligence work. Ambassador Volkov simply smiled, the diplomatic mask finally dropping to reveal the relief beneath. They had done it. Against all odds, humanity had not just survived the trap but emerged stronger. They had exposed corruption, forced reforms, and secured a place in galactic civilization on their own terms. The cost had been weeks of preparation, enormous risk, and the very real possibility of catastrophic war. But the alternative would have been subjugation or destruction. Admiral Rivera raised his glass. To paranoia, preparation, and never taking anything at face value. The others joined the toast, recognizing the dark humor and celebrating traits that had saved humanity. Dr. Tanaka spoke thoughtfully. "We won today, but we created something new. A more democratic council. Greater cooperation, shared technology. In 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, how will that change the galaxy?" Sarah considered the question. Change was always uncertain, bringing both opportunities and challenges. But surely a system based on cooperation rather than domination had better long-term prospects. We gave species tools to shape their own futures rather than having them dictated by others. What they do with those tools will define the next era of galactic civilization. Ambassador Volkov added her perspective. "We also proved that younger species can contribute meaningfully. The Council developed over thousands of years, creating established patterns and assumptions. Humanity brought fresh perspectives, different solutions, alternative approaches. Diversity strengthens rather than threatens civilization if it is embraced rather than suppressed. That lesson alone makes all of this worthwhile." The conversation drifted to practical matters. The return journey to human space, the briefings they would give to Earth government, the ongoing work of implementing the new treaty. But underneath ran a current of satisfaction. They had faced an existential threat and overcome it through intelligence, preparation, and the courage to stand firm when surrender seemed easier. Humanity had earned its place among the stars not through conquest, but through demonstrating they would not be conquered. Sarah stood at the viewport, looking out at the council station and the thousands of ships orbiting it. Somewhere in that vast structure, Chancellor Vexthor was probably reviewing what went wrong, trying to understand how his perfect trap had failed so completely. She felt no particular animosity toward him. He had acted according to his understanding and values, but those values had not accounted for human stubbornness, creativity, and refusal to accept defeat. The galaxy had tried to deceive humanity with false peace, believing them too primitive to recognize the trap. They had learned an expensive lesson. Humans might be young by galactic standards, but they carried the hard-won wisdom of species that had clawed its way to sentience on a difficult world. They understood deception because they had practiced it on each other for thousands of years. They understood warfare because they had refined it across countless conflicts. And they understood that survival often meant being more prepared than the threat anticipated. Ambassador Volkov joined her at the viewport. "What are you thinking about?" Sarah smiled slightly. "I am thinking that we just changed galactic history. Not through war or conquest, but by refusing to be victims, by being smart enough to see the trap and bold enough to spring it on the trappers. Future generations will study this moment, debating whether we were brilliant or just fortunate." Dr. Tanaka approached, holding his tablet. "I have been analyzing the vote breakdown. Several species supported us because they saw opportunity. others because they resented the council leadership, a few because they genuinely believed in the principles we articulated. The coalition we built is diverse and potentially unstable. Maintaining it will require ongoing effort. Admiral Rivera nodded agreement. Today we won a battle. The longer campaign of making this new system work is just beginning. Sarah accepted that reality. Nothing worth doing was ever easy. They had secured humanity's freedom and helped create a more just galactic order. But systems required maintenance, alliances needed nurturing, and vigilance remained essential. The Council might accept the reforms today and seek to undermine them tomorrow. Other threats might emerge from unexpected directions. Humanity could never again afford to be complacent, but they had proven something crucial. They had shown that preparation and intelligence could overcome superior numbers and longer experience. They had demonstrated that younger species could not only survive but thrive and lead, and they had established that humanity would not be intimidated, controlled, or destroyed without exacting a terrible price. Those lessons would resonate across the galaxy for generations. The Unity's hope prepared to depart, its mission accomplished Bayo. In the end, the galaxy had tried to test humanity and found them unyielding. The peace treaty that was supposed to be a deception became genuine because humans brought weapons, but chose to use wisdom instead. They had changed the rules, reshaped the game, and emerged victorious without firing a shot. That, Sarah reflected, was perhaps the most human achievement of all. Finding a way to win that no one else had anticipated, using tools and strategies others had dismissed or never considered. The stars streamed past as the ship jumped to hyperspace. Behind them, the Galactic Council began the difficult work of implementing reforms and learning to operate under new principles. Ahead lay Earth, home, and the responsibility of explaining to billions of humans how close they had come to catastrophic war and how careful preparation had saved them. The mission was complete, but the consequences would unfold for years to come. Admiral Rivera spoke for them all as the ship settled into its course. "We did good work today. Against all odds, we survived and succeeded. Whatever comes next, we proved that humanity deserves its place among the stars." Sarah nodded agreement, feeling pride mixed with cautious optimism. They had faced the test and passed. Now came the harder challenge of living up to the example they had set, maintaining vigilance while building the future they had fought to secure. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. That much was certain. Whether they would respect, fear, or eventually embrace humans as true partners remained to be seen. But the opportunity existed, created by a diplomatic team that refused to be victims, a military that prepared for every contingency, and intelligence services that saw through deception. Together, they had achieved what seemed impossible and changed galactic history in the process. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. That much was certain. Whether they would respect, fear, or eventually embrace humans as true partners remained to be seen. But the opportunity existed, created by a diplomatic team that refused to be victims, a military that prepared for every contingency, and intelligence services that saw through deception. Together they had achieved what seemed impossible and changed galactic history in the process. As the Unity's hope carried them home through the infinite dark, Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. They had brought weapons to peace talks because they suspected treachery. That suspicion had saved humanity. Now they would build peace from a position of strength, respected equals in a galaxy that would never again dismiss them as primitives. The price of underestimating humanity had been paid by those who tried. And that lesson would echo through the stars for generations to come.